We all heard the news a couple of days ago that Meghan Markle's new podcast with Lemonada is being pushed back to 2025. But do you want to know the real reason why, in my opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever, it's effectively being cancelled? Hey up everyone, it's me, Stef, the Alter Nerd, your nerdy alternative, and welcome to another dose of the Daily Nerd, where I break down the royal news and gossip of the day that's pretty much caught me eye, and oh my goodness. Yeah, let's jump into this one, shall we? Because yes, it was only a couple of days ago that Meg's new podcast with Lemonada had hit a snag, as Richard Eden is reporting here, where yes, her new podcast for Lemonada has been put on ice until next year, 2025. And you'll remember, if you are an avid follower of this channel, that yeah, it was only a couple of days ago that I reported it myself. Meg's low productivity leaves Lemonada as another Markled victim. So if you've not watched this video from a couple of days ago, do so, because it's going to give you a little bit of a basis of what I'm going to be discussing right now, which is, as far as I'm concerned, the real reason, opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever, why this podcast is effectively cancelled. And so, yeah, Megzy is reported to be in a fresh nightmare as she's actually been snubbed by her celebrity pals. And so even though the podcast has been pushed back to 2025, or as far as I'm concerned, cancelled, because I never think this thing is going to see the light of day, yeah, Lemonada trying to say, oh, well, there's scheduling conflicts because the podcast would be broadcasted at the same time as the Netflix show is all BS, guys. It's all BS. And I said that in my previous video. Kinsey Schofield seems to be thinking along the same lines because she's claiming that there's a lack of available dates for prospective guests, and that's proving to actually be the stumbling block why this podcast has not actually been lifted off the ground. Now, she's told GB News, quote, there are sources telling the Daily Mail that Meghan has a list of very high-profile guests scheduled to participate in her new podcast. But does she? Very high-profile guests usually have their diaries filled months in advance. Meghan should know she used to be that high-profile. Ooh, the shade from Kinsey right there in that small little bit. Megzy should know she used to be that high-profile. So this is the thing, right? It's not about scheduling conflicts, because as I said in my previous video, look, it actually makes a zillion sense for the podcast to be broadcasted at the same time as the Netflix show, because it's two different mediums. The Netflix show is visual, the podcast is audible, right? So she's promoting American Riviera Orchard and her brand across different platforms. You've got Instagram, Netflix, and Lemonada, the podcast, right? For Lemonada to turn around and say, oh, well, there's scheduling conflicts because it'll be done at the same time as the Netflix episodes, makes zero sense to me whatsoever. What makes more sense is exactly what Kinsey has just said here. No, it's not lifted off the ground because there's no high-profile guests that's scheduled to go in because they're all booked up, or they don't want to actually go on her podcast, such as, yes, Miss Taylor Swift herself. We all know from last year when the Spotify deal was donezo because of low productivity, right? Taylor Swift was coming up in the headlines, and here it is, how she snubbed a handwritten invite from Megzy to appear on a Spotify podcast, letting a representative say no. And so, yeah, you've got this situation here from last year where, yeah, Taylor Swift turned down an invitation to appear on Meg's podcast Archetypes, despite receiving a personal letter from Meg's, it's being claimed. But not only that, the Wall Street Journal reported that it wasn't actually then Taylor Swift that personally wrote back to Megzy to return the favour and be like, well, Megzy personally wrote to me, so I'll personally write back to Megzy. No. She did it through her representative. She was like, no, I'm not going to go onto her podcast. Furthermore, she ain't going to hear it from me. She's going to hear from it through my representative. That's how much, as far as I'm concerned, Taylor Swift dislikes Megxit. And if you didn't see my video from yesterday, my latest in my Meghan Markle versus series, then you definitely want to hop on board on this episode because, yep, it's Meghan Markle versus Taylor Swift. I'm never, ever going on your show. And guys, there is a history between Megxit and Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is team royal family all the way. You might not think it, but she is. So check out that video from my Meghan Markle versus series from yesterday. But this is the thing, right? All the celebrities are seeing her, as far as I can tell, as basically poisonous, as toxic to their own brands, right? As Megxit is now being warned that a podcast could actually be a PR disaster and could see her facing a future red flag. And so this is from an expert here called Ryan McCormick. He's a PR guru, and he suggested that this could actually be all complicated for Megxit. In an interview with The Mirror, he says, quote, Meghan's new podcast delay in the wake of all the Phoenix rising after Spotify deal collapse hype is a PR disaster. Now, apparently, there are 4.1 million podcasts in existence today. That means at least 4.1 million people, many of whom probably don't have a comfortable, privileged life like an ex-royal, were able to do what Markle can't do. The shade yet again. The fact that a show is apparently being pushed back to 2025 will likely cause interest to plummet and become a red flag. And may I just add, yes, at least 4.1 million people have done what Megxit can't do, which is launch a podcast, right? But there's something else that the 4.1 million people can do that Megxit can't do. It's called work. It's called work, guys. But this is the thing, right? You know, things have not lifted off the ground before they've even started. So you've got Megxit's podcast with Lemonada, which, as far as I'm concerned, it being pushed back to 2025, it's effectively cancelled. I do not believe that podcast with Lemonada will ever actually see the light of day. Just like, Netflix animated series Pearl that Megxit tried to get off the ground. It was one of several projects that were actually dropped by the streaming giant itself. Apparently, the series was planned to centre on the adventures of a 12-year-old girl who's inspired by influential women from history. Netflix was like, not good enough, so we're going to cancel it before it even lifts off the ground. And apparently, according to the reports at the time, they were like, nah, we don't like Pearl, but, you know, this Heart of Invictus documentary series, Netflix was all for that until they weren't. Yeah, we remember this little nugget, don't we, from August, September last year when Heart of Invictus was released and it failed to make the top 10 list on Netflix, both in America and the UK. No matter what Hazza and Megxit do, it's just at the moment destined to fail. This is why, at the end of the day, yes, the podcast may have hit a snag before it's even lifted off with Lemonada, but it really ain't due to scheduling conflicts, because that makes zero sense whatsoever. What makes absolute sense is that Megxit just ain't able to pull in the A-list crowd and the elites to be able to interview for a new podcast for Lemonada. Because she ain't worth it, guys. Yes, they see her as a red flag. They see her as an absolute PR disaster. With that being said, if you appreciated this video and you want more, believe me, I'm sure there's going to be more, don't you? And make sure you subscribe to join our alternate tribe. I'll be honest with you, help us get to 1 million so we can also get that gold play button right there and hopefully cause a Meghan Markle meltdown on Instagram. Like, share, comment down below your opinion, conspiracy theories, whatever's. Also, as well, if you've got some very strong opinions about Megxit's podcast with Lemonada, and I bet you do, then make sure you send me a super thanks. It's just below this video right here. We can have a conversation about this because it does guarantee a response from me. And until the next time, you guys, laters.